Well, after watching the disgusting display on Globebusters the other day about Mad Mike Hughes dying on his rocket launch, basically Bob Knodel, Karen B, and Jeranism discrediting the man and even hinting to the possibility that he might still be alive and did this all in a matter to make money and sell t-shirts, don't worry, I'm pretty sure that your title is secure on being the masters of making money off bullshit and selling t-shirts. At least Mike did stuff with the money that he received. But of course, they moved on to another subject.
Okay, so basically, what Zach wanted me to point out there was the inconsistency of the arguments that even Walter Lewin himself and the mainstream have to address when it comes to gravitational versus electrodynamic type of forces, right? Again, there is absolutely no field to measure. The only thing they can do with gravity is describe what it does. What does it do? Well, it accelerates things at approximately 9.8 meters per second squared towards the Earth.
Hey, thanks, Bob.
Nobody is denying that there is a downward acceleration.
Except for an overwhelming majority of flat earthers.
But what is causing that? It isn't this completely new and unproven thing called gravity. It is a product of electricity and magnetism.
Bob, Isaac Newton's work on gravity and the publication called the Principia was published in the 1600s. However, electromagnetism wasn't actually discovered until nearly 2 centuries later. So, which one's new?
The only reason that we are even allowing it to be called gravity is because it does, in fact, create an acceleration towards the Earth. This is undeniable.
Well, nobody except for the dozens, if not hundreds, of flat earth believers who say that objects fall because they are returning to their source, or the others who say that objects are just seeking their equilibrium, or other ones who say there's no such thing as gravity, there's no measurable speed, up is up and down is down. You really need to define who it is that you mean when you say nobody is saying that, because that's coming from a lot of your followers. But thanks anyway.
Is the question that I asked my friend, the PhD electrical engineer. I gave him the whole spiel about, helium.
With all due respect to your PhD in electrical engineering friend, who I'm not certain you have, when you call out somebody's credentials, that really only has an advantage when they are actually related to the subject matter. However, helium is a gas, which is more related to chemistry than electrical engineering. For the same reason I wouldn't ask my dentist about video game design. It's just not his field of study.
Is that if you have two balloons and they're not blown up at all, you drop them, they both fall to the ground at the same time.
Hey, Bob got something right.
If you blow them both up with air, let them go, well, they kind of float down to the ground
Hey, that one's true too. Now, with Bob being a commercial pilot, as well as military airborne experience, of course he knows why. Tell him, Bob.
because there's an element of buoyancy going on there.
An element of buoyancy. And which element would that be, Bob? Because the balloon, filled with air from my lungs, is actually heavier than the empty balloon. Now let's not forget, Bob claims to have been a commercial pilot, and he has some military airborne experience, according to him. The reason why a blown-up balloon falls slower to the ground, even though the gases inside of it are heavier than the air around it, is quite simple. It has to do with aerodynamics, given that there's more surface area, and of course, drag on the opposite side of the balloon from the direction of travel. It has nothing to do with buoyancy. Drag, air resistance, and surface areas are things that a commercial pilot and a skydiver should be quite familiar with. Don't you think? Let's keep going.
Now, if you take helium and you take an empty metal container and you fill it up with helium, guess what? The weight of that container actually increases, right? Why? Because helium has mass, helium has weight.
If you were starting with a vacuum, then yes, the introduction of helium would increase the weight of the container. But if you're starting with a container that has unpressurized air in it, then no. The container will not gain weight until the molecular density of the helium equaled that of the surrounding atmosphere.
So,
Sorry, Bob.
you're wrong.
But when you put it inside of a balloon and you blow it up to an identical volume
Amount,
on the
yeah,
outside, the helium goes up and the air will still go down.
Bob, an identical volume to what? That comment made no sense.
Why is that? Well, again, the mainstream is saying that this is a product of it being more buoyant. I've looked at other possibilities in that helium and hydrogen are both diamagnetic, and they are essentially repulsed by electromagnetic fields.
Know what other gas is diamagnetic there, Bob? Nitrogen. And yet it is the most abundant gas at sea level. If your diamagnetic claim were true, it would have been repelled from the Earth's surface a long time ago. And you know what else is diamagnetic there, Bob? Water. So if your claim were true, water would have been repelled from the Earth's surface a long time ago. Additionally, do you know what the human body is mostly comprised of? Water. And yet, here we stand firmly on the ground, not repelled upwards, as your diamagnetic claim suggests it should. Now I know what you're wondering. Did I try the same magnet test with a helium balloon? Of course I did. However, no matter how I tried to discharge it, the tiny amount of static electricity on the balloon's surface overpowered the magnet. But if Bob's attempted claim that the diamagnetic properties of helium gas were a suitable replacement for gravity, the magnet should have simply flung the balloon to the other side of the tub, and the small amount of static charge would not have been an issue. I also look forward to Bob showing us how this all works with lead, because lead is also diamagnetic. But then again, so is krypton. Maybe that's why Superman can fly. Here you go, Bob. Let me help you out with your next big test.
Oh my god!